here with another edition of The Exchange. It's been a long weekend since we last recorded. I'm joined with Blake Doyle, and we are ready to kick things off this week. And despite the ongoing coronavirus, we're able to get some productivity done. What's going on today, Blake?
Oh, it's another productive day. In fact, it's surprising. The issue that I have for the business that we're into is the funnel in our forecasting. So there's still projects that we're managing and trailing, but it's how you build that funnel and how you come out of this recession. And that's where the demand stimulation hasn't occurred, I don't think, yet from government. They've been reacting, but not planning. So anyway, we talked about that a little bit this week.
We'll discuss that at a further point. So a little bit of tragedy out of a close to home yesterday at Nova Scotia. Massacre that took the lives of, I think it's up to 17 now, including RCMP officer Heidi Stevenson. So pretty sad that even like with everything that's going on in the world, that this is kind of thrown on top. I think everyone was a bit shocked to hear what came from it and how mental diseases kind of take over, and we can't do much about it. But pretty sad out of Nova Scotia, and the Premier and both the Prime Minister addressed it yesterday.
Yeah, it's quite a tragedy, and it's a tragedy especially when a peace officer and a essential service staff member who is trying to manage the security of the economy and the environment is affected. It's terrible, but I think this is difficult. I think we've adapted well to this isolation, but clearly it's taking toll, especially if there's underlying issues. I'm sure there's lots of struggles out there.
Yeah, and I'm sure that we'll find out more in the coming days, but there's been some rumors about kind of how it happened or whatever, but it's pretty sad when we lose an RCMP officer and 16 other Canadians that didn't expect that their lives would be ended during isolation and during all this. So I guess it's important to address that those kind of things can happen close to home, and I guess it's being recorded as in Portapique, Nova Scotia, the biggest massacre since the École Polytechnique in Montreal, however many years ago.
I didn't see it. This is it's uncommon in Canada. It's funny. It's not funny actually. There's another stat that I heard that it's the first March that there hasn't been a school shooting in the U.S. That's really because the schools are not in.
Yeah, that is pretty sad. Yeah.
So it's
a harsh
very
reality.
Uncommon. Yeah.
Anyways, I guess switching to public affairs, is your article took a bit of it started a lot of conversations this weekend. So do you want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, it's fun. Like there's often there's certain articles that seem to resonate, and a couple of weeks ago we had a good one that did resonate. This one, it kind of exploded. Which is encouraging. It kind of went viral, to be honest. I had comments from across the country and a lot of direct connections, phone calls, texts, emails, LinkedIn messages, Facebook Messenger messages. People were connecting with me who had not connected in the past. And we can review what I was talking about, but really it was about how do you have a planned and organized emergence of the economy and what has to happen in order for that to be achieved. And we've got some pretty good guidance from our chief public health officer, and everybody's respected and managed that, and we don't need to change that course. But I think we can start to ease in some economic activity, and certainly there's a little bit more aggression to do that in the States, maybe a little bit too much, but there is an opportunity to sort of open some things up and maintain social distancing and support reemergence. The longer this economy is stalled, the more challenging it is to restart it. And that was kind of the context, I think, of the article.
Even like what I noticed on whether it was Facebook or something, people that would never even talk about the economy ever, like you'd have to see, I don't know, like school teachers or just people that would never be kind of economically thinking. They were saying, I like this guy's words. Like it makes sense to have an exit strategy. And I think you as an innovator in kind of your field, that's what I've picked up too, is you've always had the kind of, okay, but what's the plan after that? So regardless of the situation, whether we're in a decline or in a positive, like a bull market, you always have to have what's next, the next step. And we haven't really seen that yet. And I think that'll be important in a couple months' time, whenever this does kind of die down and people are able to go outside again and the economy starts picking back up. We can't just go from 0 to 100. You have to have some sort of strategy and some sort of plan in place.
And who's managing that strategy? It's fun. So I've asked that question of the communications department now 3 or 4 times, who is providing economic guidance? Apparently there's an economic advisory committee. To this point, they haven't shared that. So maybe they need to be FOIP to kind of understand who's providing economic guidance. Now, I did have a couple of people reach out to say, look, we're on this committee and we do meet once a week. And I think that's great. But it's past time now to start to articulate that there's a plan and what that plan is. So as a consequence of this article that I wrote, there's been a grassroots movement to establish committees. And there's a couple that have percolated now. And, in the absence of seeing guidance directed from a formal level, there's going to be some informal channels that have established. I think that's great. We need innovators and disruptors and community leaders to put forward some thoughts.
And I'm like, from a personal level, I do some volunteering with like a golf in the golf industry. And even all the golf courses have made like their own kind of subgroup to say, well, we got to take this on together because
Of course.
there's no one size fits all. And
So
I think that
is your volunteer work putting balls in the woods to see if they grow?
yeah, I go pick up my balls out of the water, and everyone else is no. I try to keep it straight. I was actually hitting golf balls the other day in my backyard, but yeah, no, I think every industry association is starting to do that. I think,
and that's good. They need to take responsibility, but it should be coordinated, and
it should come from the top down. Yeah,
of course it has to, because at the end of the day, there's an opportunity to disrupt that. The economy is just disrupted to some extent by edict, so it has to be in parallel with the wishes of government. You need that direction, and I guess I'll leave it at that. But I'm certainly curious what's happening behind the scenes. Who's involved? Is this a bipartisan effort? Is there a secret group of people kind of helping to steer this economy? I'm sure they're very credible people. It just it'd be appropriate to know that, and it might calm some nerves, and you might not have all these little subgroups creating their own agendas, which is probably not constructive in the long term.
Well, that's the thing. Whenever like the people who are supposed to be doing it don't, the real leaders, like you said, the disruptors, the innovators, they'll do it themselves regardless, because they understand that something has to be done.
Right. Yeah. I mean, for me, the opportunity is going to be south of the border. That's going to open up. So how do you connect to that market from this location? Whether they should be open or not doesn't matter. The economy is going to be active, and we may still be stalled. So anyway, lots of interesting opportunities for.
So you kind of, in the article, you kind of had like almost like a 4-step plan. Do you want to kind of go over that if you remember what you wrote anyways?
It's funny. There's a lot of pieces, and I think there's something in this article that resonated with a lot of people, from supporting the vulnerable society to looking at that 4-step plan. And I covered a lot of ground in a few 100-word article. There's nothing magical. I just, in a couple of minutes, popped down what I thought would be some logical steps. So it wasn't didn't spend a lot of time on it, but really
still, the thing is, if you don't, you have to suggest something. If you don't suggest it, no one can argue it. So now someone can see your 4 points or whatever you put in it and say, okay, what about this? And you can say, oh, well, that makes sense. So until you were kind of the first one to publicly say anything of what we should do. So now some other people can say, oh, well, I think you forgot this. I like this kind of thing. But until you put that first draft out, nothing's going to happen.
Hopefully somebody read it. Who knows? I hope they've got time to read The Guardian. Yeah, so I think this is all intended to stimulate discussion and discourse and conversation. And I think in this case, it's done that. So really the first step is, let's identify the viral vector. So who is contagious, who's been immunized? Immunization is probably short lasting because it's like a cold. This is coronavirus. You'll probably catch it again before there's a vaccination. So who is immune to it at the moment? How do they re-engage in the market? We've talked previously about controlling our borders. I think with the Emergency Act, that's probably the intention of government. Tighten the borders down, restrict movement of people, and then control our community transmission in our province. That's achievable. I think we're probably on path to that. If there are short-term remediations or fast testing, there's a company there's Abbott Labs in the States, but there's a Canadian company now that can do some rapid testing. Let's make sure that we get any remedial benefits like medications to the frontline workers, those that are taking the risks, and there's many. And then how do you initiate a low touch economy? So how do you start operations maybe on a managed basis? So if you've got a shift, maybe you're working at different times, 24 hours a day as opposed to work hours. Maybe an office building, you have every second day, it's different batches of people. Every third day, you can start at 10% productivity, 25%, 50%. I mean, we're not going to be at 100% anytime soon, but can we start to inch our way toward engagement and activity? And another one is buy local. So I've seen there's a number of groups popping up. I know, as we mentioned before, I'm in the Summerside Chamber. There's talk there about building a portal. There's a Facebook group about buying local. But what we need is a consolidated portal where people can post their wares, commit to shopping local, engage locally, and then build the distribution network so local e-commerce can be transacted here within our borders. And then some sort of a I guess, a confidence-inspiring resumption to economic activity. And it doesn't have to be all or nothing. It's a phased-in approach that is supported by the public chief health officer and the provincial government and all the industries. But we have to have a vision that we're going to resume to normal, because I think many people are enjoying this sort of forced vacation, but it's not sustainable. The longer it goes on, the worse it is.
Some people are enjoying it that might not have had as busy a schedule, but for a couple
Yeah,
weeks, it took me a while to kind of, okay, I have this much work to do, but I have to do it from my bedroom versus from an actual location.
yeah, business don't like it. Then the longer it goes on, the harder it is to restart. And we don't want to see business mortality, which I think we've already seen to some extent.
And
We
we
got to
will
get
see,
people
because we
back.
don't know what will happen throughout the summer either. We don't see, there's
Right.
no light at the end of the tunnel yet anyways.
But we talked about a staycation, and I mentioned that a month ago. There's no reason that we can't have and not every tourism operation should open, maybe for the summer, but those that can they be supported by the local economy?
Yeah. Even if it's
Yeah,
at a lower capacity than before, there's likely some sort of opportunity. If it's obviously, you can't have a full functioning staff, maybe like you would last summer
right.
when we had over 1 million visitors, but there's still an opportunity that you could operate at 50%, have a little less staff, but still kind of support the local market.
And for you, you can still volunteer to plant your balls in the woods for somebody else
Yeah,
to
light
find.
my
Like that's,
exactly. Yeah, it's a full circle.
yeah, you're creating an economy, and you know, young people to find balls and resell them.
Yeah, anyone who wants to see Blake's article, it's on our Facebook page, and it's all over the place because it went viral like a TikTok. But you'll be able to see it I can put the link in this episode. Other than that, in terms of other kind of public affairs, the Tories or federally seem to be pushing to have in-person House meetings
Right.
in Parliament. I don't really see the benefit to that, but maybe you see it. I don't know. But just to kind of do some math that I seen on online earlier, is that if let's say a full House is 338 people, but usually unless it's question period, there's usually only about 50. Like if you see videos, there's usually about 50 MPs in the House. Like it's completely empty unless it's question period when they're grilling. And even in question period, there's only about 20 people that ask questions, whether it's from government, opposition, or third party.
So are you saying maybe we don't need the legislative
So
branch at all?
I don't know why the conservatives want to put all 338 in the House. Doesn't make sense. So what do you have to say about that?
Well, I guess, I think our MPs have been accessible. We had Sean Casey on this podcast, and he was very transparent talking about the initiatives government had. Last week, the Summerside Chamber actually had a conversation with Robert Morrissey and Wayne Easter, and they were very accommodating of their time. Federal ministers have been available to various chambers.
The chamber had Melanie Joly last week, I think.
Yeah. So people are accessible and they're communicating. I think that's good. I guess there must be some arcane rule where you can't have virtual meetings. Probably.
Yeah, it's a rule from 150 years, 200 years ago, whenever Canada became a country or whatever. So it's in the Constitution from years ago, and they just haven't changed it.
And I think there's danger to changing that too, because it relaxes things, and there's all kinds of accommodation why people want to participate from a different environment. So I think you have to be careful. From the perspective of the leaders, I guess Andrew Scheer and Justin Trudeau both are traveling all over the country, ignoring guidance to not travel. So
Trudeau's staying within a realm. His cottage is only down the road. Scheer's going from Saskatchewan and back.
I don't know. What I read is they're both traveling. So
traveling, yeah.
Interpret it how you want.
Use travel lightly.
But I think it's an accountability measure, and it's the same with the province. I think the Greens are trying to get the government back into the House to discuss some of these investments that they're making, and they should be challenged. They should be challenged locally, and they should be challenged nationally. You can't have
I agree.
excessive spending without some checks and balances. So I don't know what the mechanism is. They need to find an accommodation, but I think they do need to have a debate on spending for sure.
I don't federally, you couldn't have a Zoom meeting. 338 people would be a zoo, but provincially you probably could because it's only 27. And even if you only had half of that kind of
right.
just proportionate numbers in terms of how big the caucuses are, you could probably do it. And I think that's what will happen. And even they talked about opening the legislature on PEI and having up to 10 people, because I think that's how you can kind of do the math on that. And then you wouldn't have to have people coming from, whether it was Hal Perry and Tignish, or you'd need Colin Levy from Surrey because he's a speaker, but other people down east, you wouldn't really need them to travel as far. You could probably kind of do it with what's around the central area. But federally, you could never do, obviously you can't do a Zoom meeting, but you can have 30 or 40 people instead of all 338. That's just my opinion. You don't need the whole bunch to go debate bills. You can have the leaders and the deputies and the ministers or whatever.
Or even vote by proxy. I mean, you
Yeah,
might
you're
take
right.
regional blocks and say, okay,
Yeah, you're right.
Lawrence McCauley, you're going to represent the issues
Yeah, yeah.
at the table. The other question, who really wants to travel? Because it's not easy to get to Ottawa.
Especially
So,
look at a lot of MPs are the kind of older bracket that are less immune to coronavirus too. So
right.
not that it's not spreading as fast as it once was, but it's still out there. If you're going through the Toronto airport, that's the last place I would want to be. I'd rather go somewhere way far away than compared to Toronto.
Even driving, I mean, there's all kinds of community transmission points from gas nozzles to bathrooms. So
McDonald's.
Well, wherever you got to stop on the way, it's a long drive. Anyway, it's an interesting challenge, but one I'm sure we have the capabilities to overcome.
I agree. And I think PEI, there was actually a Globe and Mail article about just kind of what PEI is doing right. I think just because our borders, we are able to shut our borders because it's through a bridge. It's not as easy to get to as other provinces. I think we have been doing a good job. I think the last couple of days, though, we have seen more and more people kind of walking outside or doing whatever, which is a little scary, I guess. But I think at the same time, they realize that we have to stay at least 6 feet apart.
It is scary. I know I've got family members that are involved in frontline healthcare, and as the weather warms, there's going to be a tendency to relax. I see kids that probably shouldn't be co-locating are, hanging out, and they're vectors. They may not get as affected, but they can certainly transmit to parents or family members or grandparents. So until we're kind of given authorization that we've got the all clear, we should respect that. But the one thing about PEI is that we have managed it well. And if we can kind of get this dealt with effectively, we're a beacon to the world. We're going to be able to demonstrate this is how you manage a virus, this is how you lock down, quarantine your borders. And the goods that we produce, whether it's lobster or French fries, they're going to be sought after because it's coming from a pure environment. It's like having, I don't want to say GMO food, but there's going to be a segment of the economy they're going to be very interested
that you can't get anywhere else.
Offer.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And if our economy kind of gets the jump start before everyone else, then I think obviously they're going to say, oh, we can get it from PEI because they're functioning at even at 50% versus zero, what it is now essentially.
Yeah. So there you go, Sam. I hope that people are watching this. I hope decision makers are watching it. And
I'm sure they will. There's been a lot of public policy issues that were implemented after the exchange. Discuss them.
Sadly, though, nobody's reached out to either of us, at least not to me. So we're presenting ideas and they're being adopted, but not engaged directly.
That's okay. We'll keep coming up with ideas, whether they're good ones or not.
Another one, people out there have suggestions, send us a note. We're happy to share ideas and articulate perspectives, and maybe some of this will be picked up. We need to get out of this together.
We'll be ready to support business whenever we come out of this. We're fully capable of all your consulting needs too.
Well, that's a great point. Actually, you probably didn't intend to segue that, but Sam's got 4 or 5 options that are available right now to help companies organize and jumpstart, because the economy will recover and you want to be organized for it, from HR to communication to strategy. So if you need help with that, reach out to Sam.
And there's a lot of affordable options too in terms of government grants that are because of COVID, and even ones that were in place before COVID. So we're a Confederation group is able to help with whatever you need. We might not be the best looking people for the job, but we certainly have the insights to help.
Well, I think looking at my co-host here, I think others would disagree.
Yeah. I've showered for the first time all weekend today, so it's good to get that off the docket.
We may wear beanies or something to cover our hair growth. But
I started a quarantine beard too. It's day 8 or 9 now, so
okay, yeah,
keep it coming through.
And you know what? That's a vector that'll catch the COVID.
Yeah, I don't want to. Even they were saying that they were, I think health officers were wanting to say, don't get drunk because you have a higher chance of getting COVID. Like, avoid drunkenness is what the title said, I think.
So interesting. I read a stat. I think 54% of Canadians are consuming more alcohol during.
Definitely.
I guess people have nothing to do, but it's actually it's hard to get alcohol. I mean, if there's local craft brewers that deliver, but based on what I've witnessed,
domestic stuff's a lot harder. Yeah.
Boy, it's not a place you want to hang out. Long lineups.
People have been. Well, I guess every day's Saturday, so that's why probably people are consuming more. But I think a lot of people are going kind of having trick avoid cheat codes and going to either Montague or Belfast or Kincora, kind of the agency stores, because it's a little less of a line. But no, not a chance you'll see me waiting in line for a couple hours to get
Oh,
my
you
fix.
know
But
what? Some nice warm day in May, you might be getting pretty
I'll
thirsty.
put
So
my flip flops on outside.
it's there is going to be some changes. There's going to be increased demands on I don't know, surveillance is the right word, but just on behavior probably as
Yeah,
this not alcohol, but just socialization and social distancing, and that's going to be tough. So hopefully they can get this managed locally, and I think they have. Honestly, I think they've done an exceptional job. So
yeah. And I think we'll find out today. The chief public health officer has, like, Heather Morrison hasn't put out her thing today, but we'll likely see either zero or minimal cases, and that the ones that I forget what percentage are recovered, like pretty much 100% are recovered at this point. So it's nice to see, and it kind of calms you, a little more peace of mind knowing that what we're doing is working and it's not all for nothing. So
yeah, no, it is. It's good. What else? So you must have other observations just from
um,
quarantine. Anything you've
I
seen?
think
Or
just in terms of from a business perspective, that there's been a handful of businesses that saying, I'm not letting this get in my way. Like, I'm going to pivot and do something. I might not make as much money, but I'm going to do something to, I think a great example, like we talk about the breweries delivering, but why wouldn't you deliver? Like, you're not going to make money any other way. So go make delivery. Even restaurants are putting growlers and kind of putting them out.
yes,
It's not all about alcohol, but that's one way that that's what people want during this time. It's clear through statistics. So if you're offering free delivery island wide, and same as restaurants that are doing it, some restaurants just closed their doors and said, no, I'm not going to bother. So, okay, yes, the times suck, but you have to do something about it. So I think there's I wouldn't say a small percentage, it's relatively big, but let's say a quarter of the businesses that were affected said, no, I'm going to go do something about it. So that's what I'm seeing real leadership that way. And a lot of it is kind of the younger business people that do carry a lot more risk and don't have it as easy as kind of the well-established businesses do, that are saying, well, we don't have a choice. Like, we have to keep moving forward.
those are the innovators and disruptors. They're
Exactly.
adapting, and it's like natural selection. Those that adapt thrive.
Yeah.
Those that don't
But yeah,
perish.
exactly. And then there's some that have always been kind of those innovators, and they're obviously showing it. But then some people that have maybe this is the first time kind of taking a risk or taking a leadership role. So that's what I've noticed from my perspective, that it's been a handful of companies that said, we're not going to let COVID get in our way. We're still going to keep pushing forward. We're not going to let it take over our business.
It'd be nice to have a portal, a centralized, localized, location where you can say, okay, who's open, who's not, what are they serving? Because even restaurants have a restricted menu.
Yeah,
So
and I think even one of our guests a couple weeks ago, Joel Ives, Century 21, his real estate company, has kind of made their own portal to say, here's what restaurants deliver, here's what breweries, here's what grocery stores. And Murphy's Hospitality Group made their own. But like you said, if you had one gigantic, and Upstreet made one too, actually, if you had one for all of PEI, not just food and drink, but other services that are available, I think you're right. It would be beneficial.
yeah, it's just a good one central stop.
Like a government sponsored one that you don't have to worry about, like someone's consistently upkeeping.
Right. So we won't criticize government, but there's an opportunity government.
Don't steal our ideas, but you can. Yeah,
you can steal that idea. You borrowed other ones, so this is one you can have too.
I think that's probably a good place to end off until our next episode. We have a couple good guests coming up this week that we'll tease a bit. But in terms of we've kind of hit the theme of community leaders, maybe people that are doing kind of unique things during this time. And I think our last few guests have shown that too.
This week we've got so a couple things. Recent guests, you can still make a donation to the food bank through Ryan Pino's Sing for Their Supper, I think is the link on.
It's through his Facebook, and I think it's been shared. It's on our page too, so if you want to check that out.
And another big viral event that's happening, I think on the 24th, right?
Yep.
Is that,
this Friday.
So Community Foundation have a great
their online gala, yeah.
Concert. So yeah, lots of activity to keep involved with, and
there's a lot of t-shirt sales for that too, actually. So that might be one of our guests in the clothing industry this week. But there's a lot of fundraisers going around with Stephen Meyer's face, the Premier's face, and Philip Brown's face, one of our first guests on our quarantine edition.
Right.
But there's kind of making fun of it, poking a little fun at them, but it's all going to charity, so it's all good.
We've had a lot of politicians, but none from the current government.
No,
someday we'll get one of those.
I'm allergic to blue, so we don't have any of them.
Maybe they'll reach out and they acknowledge
if they want to. Yeah, feel free.
Yeah, we won't go asking, but if they're around, they know where to find us.
There's
So
a sign-up sheet. We'll consider their auditions.
make an application.
Anyways, this has been The Exchange presented by Confederation Group. I'm Sam McPhail. As always, I'm with Blake Doyle, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.